Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order on December 15th at 6:05 p.m. The Canton Township, we have a study session. Do I hear a second? Let's see. Clerk Stevens, can you please call roll?
Warninski.
Here in Canton.
Foster.
Good evening from Canton.
Ganguly. Not present. Graham Hudek.
Good evening from Canton Township.
Let the record reflect Clerk Segrist is in attendance, and he is in Canton Township. Treasurer Slavens.
Good evening, and I also am in Canton Township.
And Trustee Snyderman is absent.
Thank you. Can I have a motion for the adoption of the agenda, please?
Madam Supervisor, I move that the board adopt the agenda as presented.
Support.
Second.
Thank you. Clerk Segrist, please call roll.
Warninski.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Graham Hudek.
Aye.
Segrist, aye. Slavens.
Aye.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So tonight we have Police Chief Chad Bow, and he's going to be doing a presentation on transparency, dashboard update, and embedded social worker program. So go ahead, Chad,
All right.
whenever you want to start. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to share my screen to help everyone follow along here, and hopefully that works. I was going to have a little help right now, but my deputy chief kind of is tied up with an ongoing investigation right now. So let's see if this works here. Does everyone see the transparency dashboard?
Yes.
Okay. You know, in starting off, I think it's important just to realize, that the true achievement and presentation of a successful police department comes with, an ongoing conversation like this and a partnership with the community. And we all serve the community in different ways, from the board, the volunteers, our community, and our police department. And I think tonight's a great start, where we're heading as an agency and more importantly, as a partnership with the board and our citizens. Like to propel us forward and not just rest on our past successes. We have a strong foundation, and we're going places in a positive manner. We have exceptional employees. I mean, they're achieving at high levels. They're developing a real strong skill set, and we're developing the processes, and with a partnership with the township and the citizens, we have a strong framework of service that's based in service. So we all represent citizens. We are the citizens, and we need to bring balance. And what I do as a director is set the vision, and that's excellence in service. You keep hearing this word over and over again. So it's measured in different ways, and we do it in a strategic approach. And we've been probably a little bit more guarded in what we actually do. The fundamentals of our service are community engagement, whether or community policing, whether it is community engagement through disrupting crime, through dismantling crime. We do all these things through supported by training and accountability, but what we're talking about tonight is transparency and how we get there. And we can't let these processes and program be more important than the service and the people that we work for. And based on that, I'd like to talk about police transparency and also talk about embedding a social work program. Excuse me, I'm getting some context from the media. Embedding a social worker at this police department with a goal of healing. And after we stifle and help and resolve a crisis in the community, I want to look at how do we help someone, a family, someone in need in the short term and long term, and bridging that gap. So through that, we want to talk about embedding a social worker tonight, and come back to the board later with a formal proposal if the board thinks it's a good idea, and after there's some input. It would be important to understand how to produce better long-term results with a resource broker, so to say, to understand and focus on the root causes of problems and behaviors that lead to arrest, jail, and incarceration and convictions, and all these social ills that go on from hoarding and all the things like that. So we're looking at a more collaborative approach, just like our training and education. The police department needs to be holistic. Some of the things we do after day one. So, we're starting to learn that, the social workers do the quiet labor behind the scenes after, you know, the police come in and resolve a problem, but they do the labor that helps rebuild our society and provide and navigate mental health and navigate the medical insurance and all those types of things. So with that, I'd like to start on the transparency. Feel free to jump in at any point because there's going to be plenty of questions. And tonight's about, in my opinion, about finding a way to get some input from the board and understand what the expectation, what does the citizens want to see when we see transparency dashboards at other organizations. I want to make sure that the information is accurate. So that's what we're talking about right now, the expectations of this board. Since March, April, May, June, we've been talking as police chiefs in the Western Wayne community about the accuracy of information. You saw it with maybe the conversation about citizen complaints that went out, and then the conversation I may have had with the local scribe about citizen complaints. Well, that's a great representation what I'm trying to get to. When I talk about the Western Wayne Communities Law Enforcement Group, we're looking for uniformity. Right now, we're having conversations of how you collect information on use of force data. Well, one agency may do it this way, agency may do it that way, and it really is misleading to the public. And we're trying to bring some uniformity before we just rush out and push out data. And I think it's time that we can push out data in a manner that not only we see fit, but maybe some input from the board, what you'd like to see our citizens see. So that goes with our complaint data and starting to use, which just started this week, officially, our new body cam system, using sending out some videos so our members of our community know what our police department is doing every week. So, and the CompStat data, it's really a term from the 80s, and it's morphed into what you see in the next slide here from our police department. Our crime analyst puts out this, and this information I'll send to you through email. And what that does, it's a data sheet that shows where a crime is, and what that a barometer that was used since 13 was how to get our part 1 crime down very low. And right now you're seeing our part 1 crime down to 17%, but that just accounts for murder, manslaughter, sex offenses, robbery, aggravated assaults, burglary, motor vehicle theft, and arson. What you're not seeing is what I've been speaking to the supervisor about is the fleeing and looting, the guns that are being carried by many people right now. That's not accounted for in our crime stats. Our police officers are seeing a lot more guns, and people are fleeing and looting, what I mean by that is people in cars are driving away from police officers who are trying to stop them for traffic violations or crimes. And we've taken the position that we're not going to pursue someone if we know who they are. We're not going to pursue them for a property crime because it's not worth risking other people's lives. And we've learned that through the 80s and 90s and 2000s about the logic of pursuing people in cars with, something that weighs a couple tons, potentially going very fast. So that's a concern that's going on right now. So you see in this data sheet is a lot of information. It's a conversation starter to get some idea what our board and what you think our citizens would want to see. The next one is the same thing, but essentially it is, it shows the traffic collisions and stuff like that. It shows citations, collisions, and that type of information. One of the key things you'll see is our traffic stops. They're down 40% this year because of COVID. We're trying to limit exposing our citizens and our police officers to needless contacts. Well, some traffic violations are not necessarily needless, but it's not worth risking someone's health to have a contact. So that's what you see there. And some of those, part of that sheet of paper, and I'll send that to you through email. Also, so this is what you may have seen in August, our traffic stop data. You're going to see that the breakdown of traffic stop contacts by male, by female, we broke these down before, and this is for 2020, and you're seeing right now that the next slide represents it a little bit easier, and it shows that 36% of our traffic stops are white males and 20% are black males. That's 13% are Black females and 22% are white females. And what you say, it gives you an idea who we're coming in contact with. When you go a little bit further into the details, the top cities for our arrest are Canton, Detroit, Ypsilanti, Westland, and Inkster. And the ages are represented there too. But what is not shown here, and we've talked about it in August, on August 18th, is African American males are arrested quite often in proportion to white males for traffic offenses. And that's a key issue for not only locally, regionally, and at the state level. How we approach that is the disproportionate arrests that are made. It's not our police officers are doing anything wrong at all. It's just poverty, some would say, causes some to be arrested. And that we believe it's a social economic issue, and it needs to be addressed through some of the legislation that may be going through here soon. I don't know if there's any questions on this or some questions coming into this, but it might be a good time to stop to ask a few questions about arrestee demographics.
We have some attendees. If anyone wants to raise their hand, you can do so. We can ask questions. You can also dial *6. Does anyone on the board have any questions?
Not really a question. Just want to make a point to the last thing that Director Bob brought up. I believe the Senate has passed legislation to make some things a civil infraction, whereas for they're currently a misdemeanor. And I think along those lines is, driving with a suspended license and things like that. So I think that may have an impact on some of the arrest data moving forward, assuming that it passes the House.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I know one of the concerns I have is failure to comply with a civil infraction and the side effects of that. Does that become a warrant? And does that potentially same person that because of legislation was maybe not arrested at the beginning, do they get arrested for the not being able to pay for the civil infraction fine? So it's that wheel of just the system, the way it works, and in the system of accountability, what does the police department need to do in response? And it's really a challenge, because the goal is to treat everyone the same way on these traffic stops, but we're finding over time that African American males go to jail quite often for traffic offenses. That's the truth of the matter. I don't want to rush through this too quick, but the juvenile diversion program. So we've talked.
Could you, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, Kate, sorry.
Chad, could you just give me an idea of what are waivable citations as opposed to?
Very few of those are,
none?
yeah, so the crack windshield, something like that, where you're given a citation. So it's called, you may have heard it considered a fix-it ticket, cracked tail light, and there's still like administrative fee potentially if you go to court, or you show the court that you fixed it, and there's still a small fine or fee to process the citation. We've handled it a number of different ways in Canton Township, where we developed our own, what we would consider fix-it ticket, where the person would have to pay the $15 or whatever it is at the court, where they would come to the police department, show that it was fixed, we sign off, and the citation is never issued. As you see, we really backed off on issuing those. There's only 21 in 2020. So it's really a small number in comparison to the total volume of traffic contacts, which is, the total is over 11,000 traffic citations or contacts.
Thanks.
So Chief Chad, is probably a couple slides back, but you had talked about a lot of people not stopping. So when they don't stop, what do you do? Do you take their license and you follow up, or how does?
A lot of times, if we have a license plate, sometimes we just know from past contacts, potentially. We'll do, when the question comes with why do you have undercover police officers? Well, for instance, would be if you know who they are and investigate, you'll follow up. And when they're on their shopping, or they walk up to the gas station, they go to Meijer, you arrest them prior to going to the store where it's safe, it's more static. It's not a situation where there's a pursuit again. So you're not forcing jeopardy. That's, you know, and there's a good number where we never learn who that person actually was during the pursuit. But some intelligence does allow for learning.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have anything else? Go ahead, Kate.
Well, your question, Emery, prompted me, actually it was Chad's response, but wondering if you have information on how many repeat contacts you have with a, you know, in a certain individual?
You know, I don't have it with me, but I'll look. If I did send out some information recently, or I forget who I sent it to, might have been the supervisor, but when we looked at repeat contacts, I'll look for anything specific or anything you're more concerned with. The foundation for the repeat contact, what I think I had before was the top 5 contacts, and what we found, the substance abuse was the main problem in the underlying reason for the contact with the person or the group of people that I specifically cited. I think I might have something here, but I have to look for it.
Sure, anything you have would be interesting.
Right there.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
I don't know, Summer too, if some of, with lame duck, did some of those bills slow up because they weren't meeting? Do you know?
Yeah, the state house, because they weren't meeting, they only really have, I think, 3 session days left.
Okay.
And so they did slow up. I know that there has been interest in passing the legislation. I'm just not sure of what their legislative calendar looks like right now.
I know a lot of the reform bills, were House Bill 4351 through 4359. So I can't cite those specifically, but I know it's from 4351 to 4359. And I learned today at a meeting that maybe some of that is slowing down because of smart meeting. So it may have to do more with bail reform. So, and currently, because of COVID and currently some of the changes made over the last year, we're citing and releasing on a lot of these traffic misdemeanors, which is a change in practice, but still at some point, if there's non-compliance with the fine and cost, the person may still find himself stuck in the system. And I believe Thursday, supervisor and I are meeting with our local prosecutor and one of the judges from 35th, and provide some perspective on what the local prosecutor does from his position. He's done that since I've known him. It's tried to mitigate for someone to show in good faith the impact of these misdemeanor crimes as it relates to license offenses. So, any further questions? One of the main things before we move on, it may not have to be tonight, obviously, is I'd like to know what you'd like to see that would be pushed out on a monthly basis or a weekly basis, something that what the board considers is important for the citizens to see. And like I spoke to earlier on, some of the considerations that I was thinking about is some of the vital policies to everyone's mostly the concerns. You know, it could be from anything, traffic stop and arrest data, some of the stuff that you'll see in that CompStat presentation, the use of force data, the complaint data, and some videos that maybe we can highlight. Some of those things are more of a consideration. We really have to step up our game when it comes to our website, and it just comes down to triage. It just comes down to personnel strength. There's just not a lot of fat within the police department, so to say.
Thank you.
I'll jump into juvenile diversion because we were very excited about the program when it started back in September. We learned a lot of things along the way, and as we had our first oversight of the program, we learned that past arrests were causing certain people, African-American males, juveniles, to not be allowed into the program, because one of the requirements mirrored what the Right Track program with the Juvenile Prosecutor's Office spoke to. And one of the disqualifiers, as you see there, is previous arrests, assaultive crimes, domestic violence. I'm still trying to find a way to enter a person into the diversion program that's committed domestic violence at the juvenile level, which is still a challenge. So after the first review, the 6-month review, there's only been 4 children that's even touched the program because of COVID since March. We had 100, as you see in the slide here, we had 149 total.
Chad, I don't
Are we
think we're
behind
seeing,
on the slide?
Yeah.
Sorry, Anne Marie.
no, it's okay. I don't think we're seeing that slide.
Yeah,
not-
we're still on traffic stops.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't. Oh boy,
Oh, so is it frozen?
it may be.
Maybe stop sharing your screen and then share it again. Maybe that would help.
Let's see how. Did that help at all?
It does.
Okay. And what are you seeing now? Are you seeing the full screen or?
The graphs. Oh,
Yep, we're seeing the full screen.
Traffic stops again.
Okay.
There's
check
the
that.
pie chart.
Juvenile
Now we're
diversion.
at diversion.
Whoa.
Okay. Now you're sick too. All right, sorry. So 149 children were considered for the program, and what I've learned since COVID, it seems like either families are not calling or we're not having a lot of contacts with children, and it's only been 4 since COVID started, when I sent out a directive in mid-March about contacts. So that's where we're at right now. So we can't really improve upon, allowing for prior arrests into the program. While there was some discretion at the end by the program manager throughout the origination of this program, we still can't improve that part of the disqualification process because we just haven't had the buying. But we've learned through this program that prior arrest and domestic violence has really stifled the opportunities for children. I know Kim Worthy, one of her chiefs, and the head of the juvenile division is setting up a meeting with myself and the township supervisor here in January, and that's going to be one of the topics, along with IT, that we want to address with her and get a little bit better understanding how she would feel, and her office would feel about us diverting some of these juvenile contacts that we have. We learned a lot from some of the members on the board, which helped propel this juvenile diversion program, but also we improved our policy that fit the law. One of the stumbling blocks, we're still required within 48 hours of notifying the prosecutor's office if we learn of a domestic violence. So, and that's in law. We did move from a shall to more of a should approach, and so that's helped out a little bit, I believe, but we still don't have like a full go where we can just divert a child from a domestic violence arrest and domestic violence oversight from the prosecutor's office and put that child right into diversion through this program at this point. And I want to continue that conversation with the prosecutor's office. And I really don't know what the perspective is going to be. I know what their the head of the Right Track program feels that they should see the information, just as we've been doing in the past few years. I think this would be a good time for questions or thoughts.
Go ahead, Kate.
Here's some of
Yeah.
the. Go ahead.
If you could go back a slide.
Okay.
Just, so
Okay.
not that, this one. Yeah.
All right.
Not that there were that many, but I see that 3 offenders' parents declined.
Right.
And so then they didn't qualify. Do
Right.
you know why? I mean, I assume it differs from family to family, but if there are issues there that we could address,
Um, the common theme they did not want to. I think at least two, they just didn't want to work with the police. There was one case, I don't know if that one's included there. I would assume it is, where the parents just didn't have transportation. This causes quite of impact on a family. It's like taking your child
Yes.
to a sporting program 2 or 3
Yes.
times a week. And
and I was wondering if that was one of the issues, was transportation.
that's where you lose some more inclusion into the program, is when there's financial constraints. So I know, I believe Clerk Sechrist might have been on the oversight of the program too. So if he had anything to add from what he saw from looking at the cases and at that oversight meeting. But from my recollection, very few had transportation problems, but they still was an issue. There were just certain people that understand, I'd rather pay the $50 or $75 smoking ticket and not have to drive my child to growth works 3 times a week or twice a week. So
Right, but if there are
Calculated.
things that we can address, then, not that it's that many people, but anything that we as a board could address or that we could help with addressing.
one idea would be, we
Sorry,
do
Michael, I cut you off.
block program. We do have those fans with leisure services. We could, consider all types of opportunities there about picking children up and taking them, and do it in a professional manner where they're not thrown in the back of a squad car and taken over to growth works. So
Michael, sorry.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to add that some, and it was a minority of cases, but there were some instances where families kind of did the calculus and decided that the charge, even keeping the charge on the student's record, was worth not having to participate in the program itself. There were some economic reasons why we had looked at transportation was one of them in one case, but to some, I mean, we spent a great deal of time talking about that and are there other ways to address it and to create accountability for the entire family. But yeah, for some individuals, it's the benefit doesn't seem to outweigh the cost of the program. I would imagine during COVID, there might be an opportunity to start to do some virtual. But I'm unaware of that. We met. I don't remember when I feel like our meeting was it May?
it was a few months late because of COVID, and so it was probably more at the 8-9 month mark from September. I do remember that. I just forgot what the day it was.
It was like the beginning of pandemic, I believe.
Okay. So March would have been the appropriate time. Add 2 months to that, so May sounds right.
Okay, yeah. So we were kind of still in the middle of pandemic at the time, but yeah.
Not to feed the board too much information, but some of the things I'd like to consider in the future is mental health diversion. So, and that kind of bleeds into, when we start talking about a social worker being embedded, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for that too, because there are a lot of the crimes that are involved there are misdemeanors too.
And that's sort of touches on what I was going to ask next, but you had mentioned that sometimes the families didn't want to deal with the police for the program. And so I was wondering if taking that off the police, then having, if we do the social worker program, then maybe that could be something that they could be the liaison instead of the police.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. With right, wrong, or indifferent, just the uniform itself can be insightful to a dynamic situation, whatever history or whatever it causes some people. So it's an option, certainly.
And that was an observation that was brought up during our oversight meeting as well. So you're right. I think you're right on the money there, Trustee Borninski.
Hey, Chad, I have a question about the prior arrests. So do we have any level of detail on like what the prior arrests were they were arrests for misdemeanors or arrests for felonies? And do we do any, are we able to grant people access to the program if their prior arrest was for a misdemeanor versus a felony.
What's nice about it, it is a blank canvas. We have to be willing to accept whatever risk or optics come. If that person wants to reoffend. But I think, as we spoke before, what I've learned is the prior arrests are assaultive, and that was a determining factor when I set up the program, is for that to be a disqualifier, which now we learn is we're going to have to consider, which we already have, is to open that up to prior arrest and be more accommodating to prior arrest.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that if a child had an issue with being assaultive or being combative, that the anger management portion of the diversion counseling would be an asset to them and would help them far more than being put into the system. So I just want to think about that some more. And I mean, you and I have had several conversations about the domestic arrest. And I think that even though the law doesn't differentiate, I think that, we can differentiate between, brothers and sisters fighting, or some kid really trying to do harm to, one of their siblings or parents. I mean, because sometimes it's just kids are kids. And so I don't want to take away an opportunity for them to participate in diversion if it's something that could help them in the future.
I think we're all on to something here. It's a maturation of this culture of the organization, because we were strict enforcement when it came to domestic violence not so long ago, and that was the expectation. So I think it's important to remember the risk components and balance it with taking a logical approach for our community, because you really so once you're labeled with domestic violence, it's problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
And-
say. Oh.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, when we talk about the concept of prior arrests, I being a former adjudicated youth myself, had at one point in time flirted with the notion that I might try to get some things expunged from my past. But because I had a pretty solid 3-year, I had a successful 3-year span as a criminal, in the sense that I had racked up a healthy amount of charges, minor possession of alcohol, marijuana, open house party. So a couple of all substance and alcohol abuse related, right? But there was no provision for an expungement because you can't be a repeat offender. And so, okay, here I am. It's been 16 years, right? Almost every single one of those charges occurred between the age of 16 and 20, or 16 and 19. And so I guess the question is, from a philosophical standpoint, I understand why they want to hold repeat offenders accountable. And that's fine if we're talking about some pretty aggressive assaultive crimes and some, especially as adults. But I think, what we all know about child brain chemistry, some of us have to learn from this, over and over and over again for that period. And I think so to me, given the psychology and what we know about how the brain works, I like the idea of trying to catch people on their first instance interaction with the law and interceding and trying to end it. But I think, if we have the discretion to open it up and broaden it to individuals who might have an additional charge, that we think about doing that or open ourselves up to doing that. And I understand that it's also that is a policy or a public perception or a political instance. A friend of mine working for a prosecutor's office, they had a 30% incarceration rate, and they intentionally dropped it down to 10%. And they clearly met some members of the community, and some people inside that office were uncomfortable with that. They went against their philosophy on law enforcement. They said, "Well, lock up bad guys." That was their method. That was their methodology. But the prosecutor and his staff had a different philosophy. And and they were successful in reducing their incarceration rate, and dropping it a third, down to a third of what it was. And they handled that, the elected official handled the political blowback, which was, I guess, what we're intended to do. And I think I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with this community coming back and saying, well, wait a minute, what are you doing?
I think there's a lot too. When you looked at if the disqualifier is prior arrest, where obviously the prior arrest never resolved the problem either. So the use of a diversion program, which in theory most likely should have happened through the arrest process and the court process, but it's a blank canvas. I think that the support that I'm hearing now, I think it really helps. I do want that meeting with Kim Worthy and the supervisor to see the perspective of the prosecutor's office. I think we need to be heard and see where we can go with that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, there's a point in petty crime where you'll see individuals who will take a short jail sentence over a probationary period because they don't want accountability, and they know I'll bide my time, And so I think that's, a program like this is accountability, and that might be why some people choose not to do it. It's not easy. It's disruptive to a family. But again, usually when a child's acting out, it's indicative of something deeper going on as well. But yeah.
And that's another question also. I mean, we know that this one doesn't show, it does show female on this one, okay. But
Yep.
do you know the ones that get rejected because of domestic violence, are you seeing anything different, handled differently now in Wayne County Prosecutor's Office?
It's been so limited. I think families are handling a lot of whatever used to be reported to us more internally because everyone's home. I can't put a thumb on it because to go 145 individuals that we were able to consider or not consider, depending if they were disqualified or not, to go from March to now, where only 4 people were involved in our process is interesting, to say the least. And it's not because we have forgotten about the program. It's just something that's occurred because of COVID.
Also, kids aren't in school, and
Yeah.
so a lot of kids are.
And they're not.
Yeah.
They're not out.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't have as many opportunities. Maybe. Do you know? Do you have the statistics on what kind of crimes were being committed by the juveniles?
Yeah. Let me move to that. So
Okay. There.
of the people involved, you can see a high number were just tobacco type, marijuana type cases. The top 2, disorderly conduct, are that's the ones that are mostly in the school district. They're resolved that way through diversion. Assault and battery, that would be non-family assault and battery. Mischief, some of those issues. And as you can see, curfew and vagrancy. So vape and mostly tobacco type issues were mostly the ones diverted. And what that means to me is the assaultive type crimes and the domestic type issues that we were getting involved in, that we are always used to be involved in, kind of carried the day and disqualified a lot of children. If you look at disqualifiers, in part, there's 14 where the victim went to prosecution, and that's something that's we don't get in. We're not the we can't be the determining factor of not having the state or the local prosecutor pursue a matter, because they're ultimately are the ones who prosecute, not the victim, not the police department, or fact finders. They're witnesses.
Do we have any questions from anyone in the audience? I'm gonna hit *6. Okay, thanks.
Anything more on diversion before we, or transparency, which is important. I really look forward to any input about what we can do and what kind of data we can push out to the public. We pay for a program to help push out our policies. Some of our policies, some of the tactical stuff, obviously we would redact, but the embedded social worker programs, like what I want to move on to next, unless someone has another question.
So I'll just say on transparency, I mean, I love the idea of a dashboard. I like that we're being transparent, and that I think the Canton Police Department in a number of ways over the years has shown that they're willing to be leaders and stuff like this. So I'm happy that we're doing it. I know that you mentioned before, what's the frequency of updating a dashboard or something like that. And I guess in my mind, it's something that would be fine to do it like once a quarter or once every 6 months or something. I don't know that it has to be done every week, but just so like the community can get a snapshot of where we are and that we are tracking these things and being transparent, I think speaks volumes.
And there's two options that I'm considering. So the Detroit Crime Commission has worked with a vendor and paid for 2 years for the 18 Western Wayne communities for the dashboard that looks very similar to what Westland has put out. That's what caused the conversation with myself, the chief of Westland, Northfield Township, and Livonia to look at the uniformity of data. So they provided, they were already in contract with that vendor. And so Detroit Crime Commission and Kim Worthy's office loves that program. And my question to everybody is, I want some uniformity, some accuracy. Because if for instance, we have 40 some 50, 60 citizen complaints for the year, then a like or a comparable community has 4, it really doesn't seem balanced. And it goes for use of force too, because we document every use of force. So we document, things differently. And it's nothing wrong. It's just the way organizations have run for many, many years. It's not, no one's done anything wrong, or it's just different, and it's misleading to the public. So that's one option, is to go with what's been paid for through our RMS system, which is through Climus. And that's one option. Or we can go alone and at the local level, work with IT and send out something through our own website. So I'm tending to consider just using something that would be live through the Detroit Crime Commission, but it's something for the board to consider too.
Kate?
So I just wanted to say, I agree with Summer about, I was thinking like quarterly for updates, or to have the dashboard updated. But I am wondering, I haven't seen the RMS system, but I'm wondering, whatever you do, whichever way you go with the dashboard, is there a way to have percentages listed as part of the data? So, because for me, I always find it easier to look at, what percent of, crimes or traffic stops, say, are, the person being stopped is white, what
Okay.
percent, things like that. Just, I think it's a lot easier for me, but I think that it's easier for the public also to understand, why there might be interesting information there, because if you just see the raw numbers, I don't think it always is as compelling.
Right.
Also, it makes it easier to compare communities.
Yep.
Right. And that's
Yeah.
that's the topic for conversation, is if we use the uniform dashboard, it's very easy to compare for our citizens, not only locally, but regionally, which is important for transparency overall. Because a lot of our partners don't necessarily just live in Canton or traverse through Canton. A lot of our stakeholders live all over Southeast Michigan. So. Okay. You're ready, we'll go to embedded social worker. So this is not, our deputy chief brought this to consideration over the last few years, and now it's really taken off with the conversation that's happened over the last few months of how to better serve our citizens. So when you look at social work, it's, it's highly, highly specialized, and what we would like to use it for is, we bring, like I said, some type of calm to the crisis, but what happens afterwards? How does a citizen navigate mental health, court advocacy, and coordinating some of the youth diversion program, like you've mentioned earlier, helping us break those barriers. Maybe if we're inciting the issue, the social worker who could be seated in this building, have an office in this building for a contracted service, could help navigate all the referrals, have access to all the referrals immediately in our police department. On occasion, you could actually call them in for like a major situation, like whether it be like what we're dealing with now, a shooting in a family home, and trying to bring services immediately to that family in crisis, and act as a liaison with the police and the community, help mediate and manage some of the cases. Like I said, we're great in crisis, but it's the short, medium, long-term services that happen afterwards that we don't really manage necessarily, besides a program we just started with diversion, and it's just a small opportunity. We do have some of the drug and alcohol recovery programs that we've participated for years, with Wayne Rescue Recovery, but it's much more dynamic. All the different social programs that are out there and helping citizens navigate, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's our crisis intervention team that our police officers are a part of and now teaching, managing our citizens with some of the resources that are available through the school district and different mental health organizations, and with our CCIC team, which used to be the Hate Crimes Coalition, and all the resources that can be tapped in there. So, what I'd like to bring back at some point to the board here in the near future is what a social worker can do and how they can address some of the common issues. We have, I think we talked about at least 408 that we know for certain were titled mental health issues or some type of mental health problem in the home or with an individual last year in 2019. So there's different types of illnesses, juvenile problems, delinquency, traumatic incidents, especially with suicide, deaths in the family. With our chaplain program, we handled it very well at the beginning. It's just that follow-up treatment. Some people don't have the resources, medical care, and the social worker may be able to help navigate all that. Neighborhood conflicts, family conflicts, elder abuse. Some of the, we have an aging community too, to some degree. We have hoarding issues. We have, on a small degree, some homelessness issues that officers here recently on their own, well, they've always done it, but they've interceded. But the long-term follow-up of that, it's important that we consider. And with a social worker too, they can jump into some legal aid issues that, not necessarily a police officer is going to get involved in, because they're on the prosecution side most often, and there may be opportunities for a social worker that's embedded in the organization to help navigate some free legal aid, whether it's criminal or it could be most likely some of the issues, landlord-tenant issues, some of the things that happen along the way in someone's life, where a social worker can help with some free legal aid. Some of the benefits of the program as we see it, we minimize the time we spend on non-criminal cause, repeat offenses, enhancing some of the victim cooperation with some of our investigation, trying to bring, some professional consultation to the family home with someone that's trusted. It's not just a wise police officer, it's someone that knows how to navigate, how to help someone, mental health professional, not just a seasoned police officer. Working with the juveniles, like we spoke about with domestic cases, maybe we can find avenues where we can introduce the social worker into that program. When we talk about multidisciplinary, as officers, we try to teach a holistic approach. We're training from all types of angles. And that's the same thing here, is providing a service to the citizens that attack a problem from all types of angles. Looking at, like I said earlier, the quiet labor of rebuilding. Maybe it's the family unit, the home, the neighborhood, the individual, finding the different opportunities there. There's, when we talk about ability to target special populations, whether it's a community that's financially disadvantaged, or a apartment building, it's over 55, whatever it may be, how to address some of the reoccurring situations. Like right now, it could be even just fraud with our over 55 population, how they potentially get targeted during this time frame. Some of the educational things that can work off what we do with community education from the police side of things. And just, we feel that we have overall community wellness. You're building trust with your community when you're trying to help people and not just focused on traditional policing. And our role has evolved over the last 25 years, and we're accepting of that role. And this is how we address some of those issues more professionally, more well-rounded, and more holistically. So at some point in the near future, if the board feels this is a good thing to consider, looking at like a contracted service, a professional service, 1-year pilot program. We had a lot of conversations at the beginning with First Step, because that was an obvious partnership over time, but really there's potential for multiple vendors out there. So I think based on our purchasing policy, based on many different things, I think it's good to, if we do go in this direction, to put this out for bid and see what other services that are out there besides the ones we're used to, which is Hygera and First Step, or First Step too, but Hygera and GrowthWorks. So we would look to have one contracted social worker for 1 year in our building for 40 hours a week, and they would have access to it. So in our building, hopefully, so most of you've seen it, but there's a nice, probably the nicest office in the township. I used to occupy it for a while, and it's in the police side of the building, but it's also segregated from like all the police action, and it's by the elevator, and so it's about as confidential that you can have and still be in the police building. So we would have that opened up for that social worker to work out of. And any questions, any thoughts?
Do you have any questions? If you hit *6, if you're on a phone for the attendees, we can answer your questions. Okay, I don't see any right now. Diane?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I think this would be a wonderful program. I was doing a little bit of researching, reading on it, and I know in Louisville they did that, and it really helped, especially with follow-ups. They found instead of having an officer going back probably to the same person over and over again, they had a social worker that worked with them. Instead of driving the patrol car, she drove a Focus and was able to do a lot of follow-up and help a lot of the residents. So I really like this idea.
Thank you. I like the idea of, having that close contact with the officers so they know each other. And that's how the referrals will happen. They'll happen, we'll have a nice system and process. But when the social worker knows the police officers and the police officers are sending emails and making phone contacts to that social worker, that's really, I think, going to propel the program. So it's going to be important for that social worker, social distancing is what it is. But once things start to, the vaccinations start to have that interaction and with our police officers to receive those referrals for even the most mundane issues to some of the more extraordinary situations, I think it's going to really benefit the community. And I would assume that we'll have to revisit it a year from now and consider if it needs to be more than one person. But
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Diane. I think it's going to be a great program. I mean, I've heard great things about social workers working in concert with police and public safety departments. I guess and I do think after the first year that you probably will find that we could use more, just because there are so many people within communities, especially with COVID happening and the aftermath of all of that, that are probably in crisis and that will need that support. But just thinking about the different programs that you would go out for bid with, and I know that with a program such as this, you're evaluating more than, you know, the cost of the program, but also evaluating the benefits and, you know, what it would bring into the police department. So I'm just wondering what your metrics are going to be on deciding which program to go with over another.
You know, with the purchasing program, we would have a, you know, a number of metrics. I don't have them specifically written out yet, but we're considering a certain number that we feel that will cover the cost. But some of the most important things is experience, reputation in the community, in the region, and the ability to network. It's going to be so important to not only address substance abuse, gambling, violence, and all those types of things, but address like neighborhood problems. It may be something that not all social workers have dealt with before, but to be able to bring people together to communicate and help address simple things like neighborhood problems that the police officers weren't able to resolve. And I see that as more of a collective effort too. I do see the police officers quite often be involved in some of those meetings, but they have to be dynamic, and the metrics will be dynamic when we make this selection. There'll be a committee of people on that purchasing process, and I have to check, but I would imagine maybe someone on this board would like to be on that committee, or maybe they couldn't be if they had the vote. So we'll have to figure that out. But it'll be a diverse group. But, you know, there's people in the township that sit on many boards for RFP. So we'll have to take a look at that. And I know in Lansing, we may consider bringing in people that from other jurisdictions that have this program to set and help us navigate what they think would be a good selection too.
Go ahead, Kate.
So I just have more questions of like your concept of how this would work. So what I think I'm hearing is that they would sort of be like an auxiliary service. So meaning that they wouldn't be going out on runs with the police, the person, the social worker would not be going out on runs, but would be helping with some of the other things that the police would normally have to do, but aren't necessarily, you know, things that police have taken on over the years that aren't really what we think of as police work necessarily.
That's a very good point. The original, if it's a call that comes into us, I mean, I guess you can make up a scenario where maybe it would be appropriate to directly just give it to the social worker, but the day-to-day mental health calls, we would go there, calm the crisis. If there is no action to be taken by the police legally, this is where the referral would start. It could be a family situation where A and B are involved in some type of crime, but C and D need services, and that's where another referral would get offered. It could be someone in our jail cell that's dealing with many different issues, and that's not uncommon for us to do a direct referral right into a substance abuse program from the jail cell. It could be a lot. You're going to find, I think, a year from now when we have this conversation again, which I think you're going to find a lot of interaction with our ordinance department and leisure services. I think that's really going to be an avenue, because quite often our ordinance department is taken on finding resources for people that are in need, whether it's hoarding or just general cleanup, because of whatever reason that people can't maintain their own property. So there's so many different avenues that social worker is going to get involved with here. I believe. I think we're going to inundate them. Number one.
Yeah, I think that there's going to be more than enough work set
Mhm.
out for them.
By no officers, they'll find a way to engage someone else in helping them get their job done. So
Mhm.
Right, and that was something else I was thinking about is you had said in the presentation for about 40 hours a week, one social worker. And I guess what I'm thinking is that a lot of things that may happen may be outside of those 40 hours. And so this is a start, but I'm thinking, and we'll see how the pilot goes. I could be wrong, but I'm thinking, things like this don't always happen to fit right into a nice 40-hour week.
right, yeah, exactly. We'll build in obviously over time. Our budget is, and I'll talk about it with the supervisor. But we're very well situated for this year when it comes to salaries, and I think there'll be some good amount of money for the fund balance for next year. But with that, we'd have to consider the overtime parts of this job, number one, and some of the benefits that come with a full-time job.
Mhm.
And
And
another thing too that I think should be kept in mind is one of your slides where you were talking about things that the social workers would be doing or social worker would be doing is possibly working with the schools. And we need to keep in mind that the schools do have social workers. And so, yes, there could be contact, but I'm going to be possessive, and these are our Canton Township. This is our Canton Township social worker. So make sure that we're not duplicating efforts,
okay,
and also, if it's something that occurred at school, that probably should be a school social worker that's involved. It may not be in all cases, but just to make sure that, because we are going to be limited, with this pilot to one social worker, just to keep in mind that there are social workers who are resources at the school, the various school districts.
that's one point I never considered. I appreciate that. I never considered that point. And we do that quite often at the police department. We know our lane, but sometimes we try to do more than we probably should. And I can see us doing that here.
Hey, can I ask a clarifying question on that? And I don't even know if you know the answer, but you bringing it up just made me think about something. So do all of the schools have a social worker? I mean, I know Plymouth Canton Schools does, and I assume that probably Wayne Wesleyan and Van Buren Public Schools does. But do you know about the charter and the private schools?
Personally,
Usually the charters are serviced by the encompassing school district.
Okay.
So just like it works for special education services, that and I will look to make sure, but I know that we do have because the social workers in PCCS, most of them are considered to be part of the special ed
Right.
services.
Yeah.
So we're required by law to service the charters, I believe. Well, no, I could be wrong on that. I'm thinking parochial and privates. So I'm wrong on that. Sorry. It's the parochials and privates that the school districts service. And then if there are services that are needed at the charters, the charter is responsible for that. Sorry.
I do know some of the parochial schools have part-time social workers. So I'm unfamiliar with the charters. Thanks, Kate.
So the details, I think, one question I had is, one of the benefits is minimization of police officer time spent on non-criminal calls. I assume that doesn't mean that if we get something called in by into the dispatch that they say, hey, this is a social worker, and they send them out.
No, I'm number one. When some of this conversation started nationally, I was very concerned with that. just, you're jeopardizing, you never know what you're walking into.
Right.
And I don't think that'd be safe as a method of operation to have a social worker intervene in these programs. But there's no problem with bringing some type of calm to the situation, then making the referrals at the appropriate time, or maybe even immediately, depending on the situation.
Okay, that makes sense.
And it doesn't mean we won't go back to the calls either. That is more of a goal, I think, that bullet point 1 than anything.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Does anybody else in our audience have questions? You can hit *6 and that'll raise the hand. No, okay. Anyone else on the board? Oh, we do have a question. I'm sorry. I think that's Lauren. Yes. Michael, can you, oh, okay, there we go. Hey, Lauren.
Hi, Anne Marie. I know I'm not representing the Indigent Defense Commission. I'm sorry. I'm here as an interested community member. Hey, I'm just curious, as you're thinking about first of all, I'm very excited to hear about this program. I think it has huge potential. I think it's a great idea. We've seen increased use of social workers in the criminal justice system amongst a lot of different aspects of the criminal justice system with really important impact. I am just thinking a little bit in the context of law enforcement and confidentiality, and sort of what those parameters would be if you had folks who were talking to social workers in a situation either related to sort of assistance in a diversion type setting, or something that then shifted into a potential criminal situation. What is the responsibility and role of that social worker with respect to reporting? What happens to those records? Are social workers maintaining notes? Who's maintaining those? If a criminal case comes to fruition, what happens then with those records? Are they just police records that become part of a discovery packet? I'm sort of curious about what's been considered around there. Just thinking a little bit about the importance of this program, but also how quickly it could sort of disintegrate if there wasn't sufficient trust there as well, which seems like a really integral piece of engaging social workers in this way. So thanks, I appreciate the opportunity to ask a question.
Thanks, Lauren. I think that's a great question. The intention we would not have access to those records as a normal business practice. If there was something that we had to seek at the direction of a prosecutor's office with a search warrant, I don't even think that would be, you would know better than I, but I believe those records would also be protected. And in a memo of understanding, I would direct that to be written when we put this together, is there has to be that separation between the police and the social worker, because just as you stated, that the trust of the program would just be gone immediately, at least especially for the repeat customers. If they understand that while they may be paid for by the police department, I can't see anything positive of having direct access to counseling notes or whatever notes that would be taken by a social worker.
Thanks.
And if you don't mind, I don't think they would, I think that would be protected information, would it not be, Lauren, if it was set up properly?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is going to depend. I'm sorry, I'm making dinner for my kids. I think a lot of it is going to depend on, I think you'll have to look at sort of some of the licensing rules and confidentiality rules with respect to social work licenses.
Okay.
I mean, I'm happy to talk offline with you about this, Chad. We just ran a social work defender program in Genesee County, which was great, but we had to think through some of these issues. So if I could be helpful, happy to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we're very successful in how we investigate crime. That the intention of this is, like I said, it's a step 2. The step 3 is the aftermath. I think it's good if we can find a way to set it up from the onset in a manner where there's a definite division between records, it would be important for the success. So Great point.
Great, thank you. Anyone else in our audience or on the board? No other comments? Well, thank you very much, Chad. That was very informative and great start as usual.
Well, thank you.
I know we're looking forward to just seeing some more and continuing with this work. It's a lot of good work it's been working on for the last couple of years.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't know if it's the best way to handle it, but if you want a copy of the PowerPoint, just let me know and we'll get it to you.
Yeah, I would like a copy.
I
Yes,
do. Just send it to all of us.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank
That's a
you.
good idea. Do we have any other public comment? Lauren, I noticed your hand is, okay, there we go. Any other public comment? Okay, great. Anybody have any comment on anything else on the board?
I would just like to, if I may,
Mhm.
and I know that we're missing 2 of our key trustees, but just like to ask that as we get together or start talking about scheduling our study sessions in January for Township 101 and potentially bringing in a facilitator to do some strategic visioning, that the board start looking at your schedule and figuring out ways to make sure that we are open to get that kind of work done. I think Amy had said that we were looking at some Saturdays. Is that right?
Yes, correct. She's looking like mid-January, I believe, for Township 101. And then the end of January for some strategic goals meetings.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I had found a facilitator. I discussed that with treasurer and supervisor. They were comfortable with moving forward. So we're going to check availability and see what kind of proposals they have for us. And we'll get back to everybody, but probably with like a survey monkey or just some tentative dates to try to get everyone to block that out.
So look for the dates. They should be coming in the next couple of days. Yeah. Actually, some good news. Why don't we do acts of kindness again? Chad, do you want to tell them about the police are going to be doing this upcoming week?
Friday night, if you like, come up to Kroger North, which is 40 Canton Center. The Salvation Army will be working with them. Social distance, masks. Our police officers will be there ringing the bell in their own time. Not to foreshadow too much, but if one of the officers is available, he's known to dance and cheers. So I'd like to be there to see that. It's quite the show, let me tell you from my experience.
So that's Kroger North, December 18th, around what time, I'm sorry?
4 p.m. to 8 p.m.
4 p.m. to 8 p.m. So you can go join the dancing police and help collect money for some of our families in the community.
Yeah, it was very good last year. So.
And then also they had the the toys for Tots. Is that what it's called, or what happened?
Yeah, it has a different name, but essentially shop with a police officer. It happened again at Target. Target sponsored, and we've received a lot of support from some local businesses, including Home Depot. And this year we didn't get to shop with the children, but they used the list that the children provided, and they went to Target, they shopped, and they our officer Patty and another officer, they're wrapping some of the gifts. Some of the gifts needed to be wrapped, so we're doing that right now, or they were doing it earlier. So.
Oh, great.
That's awesome.
Good year. We're still finding ways to engage our community and work with leisure services on a number of items, and it's been a creative year for our folks, but we're having fun.
Thank you. I see Director Greg Holmberger is on. Greg, did you want to add anything that's happening with some of your programs?
We've just had, thank you very much. We've had very successful programs. A lot of participation. Our holiday walk was extremely successful. and all of our special events are being well received by the community. So our staff is just working really hard to come up with new creative ways to engage the community in new opportunities, because COVID has changed the way we do everything. But we're seeing steady but not huge increase in our participation at the summit. So it's good. We're still able to space everybody out and kind of get everybody this the safety that they need to be able to work out safely, and give them the opportunity to work out still. So thank you.
Great, thanks. All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Oh, sorry, go Diane. I'm sorry, Diane, go ahead.
Sorry about that. I just again wanted to remind residents with tax season in full swing, Township Hall is closed. They can put their payments in the Dropbox if they want a receipt. We're more than happy to mail one back to them. Just put a little note, put envelope with a stamp if you can, and we'll mail back a receipt. Otherwise, they can mail in their payments. We have a phone number they can call, they can pay online, but we're getting inundated with people calling, wanting to come in and make their payments. And because of COVID, we want to keep the residents safe. We want to keep staff safe. So we have that Dropbox. We're here, we're constantly emptying it, and we're more than happy to send back receipts. So hopefully next winter's tax season, we'll be able to have our windows open and we'll be collecting taxes in. But for now, use a Dropbox or mail, because we want everybody to stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Michael, did you want to talk a little bit about, I mean, you guys are getting dog licenses online now, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, we had implemented online dog licensing last year. It was our first time doing that. It was fairly successful. We did have a backup where individuals could come in and get a dog license over the counter. That is clearly not the case while we are in the current pandemic that we are in. And so individuals who have a dog are encouraged to go online, get a license, obtain a license that way, or they can do it by mail if they would like to, drop off a check in the form. We have the Dropbox open out back. We are not available for appointments for individuals who want to do dog licenses, and we will discuss in January potentially having some days open for individuals who have a difficult time getting access to the internet, for them to potentially come in. We are still very concerned about doing non-essential functions while we are in the middle of a pandemic, and it does feel like there's been an explosion of COVID cases surrounding my life, both professionally and personally, and I'm starting to see more losses close to home. Individuals, it looks like it's just hitting closer to home now, I think, than it had in the last few months. And so people coming in unnecessarily is something we're trying to avoid. Obviously, we've got everyone working remotely, so there'll be more information on that. But if individuals can at this point, they can do it online. And it was a convenient option that we pushed in 2019 that people seemed to love. They really did.
Great, thank you. And as Michael said, yeah, stay safe, stay distance, look for our public service announcements on the website and Facebook regarding COVID and our vaccination site that's coming. Well, thank you.
I saw a fancy, beautiful video from the supervisor. I really appreciated that. I saw it promoted on social media, I believe, by one of our Facebook accounts, and I just it really meant a lot. I thought it meant a lot coming from the chief elected official for the township to be making a statement about A, where we're at as a township, but B, also talking about the severity of what we're going through. So thank you for doing that, and thank you to Cable for putting that together. It looked really good.
Thank you. Yeah, they're miracle workers. Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
Thank you. Motion and supported. Clerk Seegers, please take the roll.
Borninski.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Graham Hudek.
Aye.
Seagrist, aye. Slavens.
Aye.
Great. Everybody have a great night. Be careful.
Stay safe.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.